227 BC. The Palace of Qin. A man named Jin Ke walked into the Great Hall carrying a rolled-up map as a gift for the king of Qin. Hidden inside that map was a dagger dipped in poison so lethal that a single scratch meant death. Jin Ke unrolled the map slowly before the king. When the map reached its end, the dagger was exposed. He seized the king's sleeve with his left hand and drove the blade toward his chest with his right. Ying Zheng wrenched himself backward. The sleeve tore. The dagger cut through nothing but air. What followed was almost absurd. The most powerful man in China running for his life around a bronze pillar, a failed assassin chasing him, and an entire court of ministers frozen in place because the law forbade anyone from carrying weapons into the throne room. The king's own sword was too long to draw in panic. He ran a full circle before finally pulling it free and slashing Jin Ke across the leg. Jin Ke collapsed. In one final act, he hurled the dagger at the king. It sailed past his ear and embedded itself in the pillar behind him. 2 inches. If that dagger had landed 2 inches to the left, what would have happened to Chinese history? Qin was still the strongest state, but Ying Zheng was not a replaceable man. The unification of China's 6 warring kingdoms was not some inevitable drift of history. It was the product of one individual's extreme will, executed in under a decade. Without him, the rival states would have reformed alliances, and China might have settled into a multi-state equilibrium, something resembling Europe. A single written language, standardized weights and measures, unified roads and axle widths, the very foundations of Chinese civilization as a unified entity, might never have come into being. 2,000 years of history unfolding along the 2-inch margin of a missed blade. This was not a one-time event. At least 3 more times in Chinese history, the course of an entire civilization hung by a thread just as thin. 23 AD. The city of Kunyang. Wangmang Tishu's Xin dynasty had sent an army of 420,000 to besiege this small city. Inside, fewer than 10,000 defenders waited. A 28-year-old officer named Lu Xiu made a decision that everyone around him thought was insane. He would take 13 men, slip down the city wall on ropes under cover of darkness, ride straight through the camp of 420,000 soldiers, and go find reinforcements. 13 men through 420,000. This was not bravery. This was something that should not have been mathematically possible. But he made it through alive. Days later, he returned with fewer than 20,000 men and charged headlong into an army outnumbering him more than 20 to 1. Then something happened that reads less like history and more like myth. According to the Book of the Later Han, on the day Lu Xiu launched his assault, the sky went dark. A massive meteor crashed into Wangmang's camp. Violent winds erupted out of nowhere, hurling sand and stone, turning day into night. The 420,000-strong army disintegrated in panic, soldiers trampling each other in a blind stampede. Chinese internet users centuries later would give Lu Xiu a nickname, Son of the Plain, meaning his luck was so absurd he seemed to be playing a different game from everyone else, as if someone behind the scenes had been tweaking the settings in his favor. But consider the reverse. If those 13 riders had been spotted by a single patrol in the dark, if that meteor's trajectory had shifted by a few dozen miles, if that storm had arrived a day earlier or later, the Eastern Han Dynasty would never have existed. A dynasty that lasted nearly 200 years and profoundly shaped Chinese culture and governance began with a stack of near impossibilities that all happened to land on the same afternoon. From heaven's hand back to human stakes. June 4th, 626 AD, before dawn. Li Simin, Prince of Xin under the young Tang dynasty, had made his decision. His father, Emperor Li Yum, had founded the dynasty only 8 years earlier, and Crown Prince Li Yongdi were steadily stripping Li Shimin of his power and plotting to have him killed. Li Shimin placed his men in ambush at Xuanwu Men, gambling everything on one assumption, that Li Dianchen would take his usual route through this gate that morning. If he chose a different entrance, the ambush would be exposed, and Li also lead route the home, the one who died. Li Diancheng rode through Xuanwu Men. He sensed something was wrong and wheeled his horse around to flee. Li Shimin spurred his horse out from the shadows, drew his bow, and released a single arrow. It struck Li Diancheng. He fell from his horse, dead. But in the next moment, Li Shimin's horse reared and threw him to the ground. Li Yuanji arrived, leapt from his saddle, and wrapped his bowstring around Li Shimin's throat. Li Shimin's breath was leaving him second by second. Then Yu Jingde arrived with his cavalry and put an arrow through Li Yuanzi. The entire affair was over in less than an hour. After that morning, Li Shimin became crown prince. 2 months later, he ascended the throne and launched what would become the Zhengguan Zhizhi, the golden age most celebrated in all of Chinese history. But during those few seconds when Li Yuanzi's bowstring was tightening around his neck, the probability of that golden age was approaching zero. The most revered era in Chinese civilization and a man being strangled to death were separated by nothing more than the few seconds it took another man to gallop within arrow range. The last story is the simplest and the most unsettling. 1363 AD, Lake Poyang. Zhu Yuanzhang and his most formidable rival, Chen Youliang, clashed on this lake in one of the largest naval battles the medieval world had ever seen. Over 800,000 men between them. The water turned red with blood. At some point during the fiercest fighting, Zhu Yuanzhang made a decision. Not a strategic calculation. Not a carefully weighed judgment. He simply moved from his command ship to another vessel nearby. No historical record explains why he switched boats. Maybe instinct. Maybe the hull was damaged. Maybe there was no reason at all. Minutes later, the ship he had just left was hit by Chen Youliang's artillery fire and blown to pieces. And the battle's outcome hinged on an equally absurd moment. Chen Youliang, aboard his flagship, leaned out to survey the fighting and was struck in the head by a stray arrow from nowhere. He died instantly. His army of 700,000 collapsed with their commander. 4 years later, Zhu Yuanzhang founded the Qi dynasty. One man casually switched boats. Another man leaned out 1 inch too far. One dynasty was born. Another force was destroyed. There was no mandate of heaven in this, no brilliant strategy, not even courage, just raw, naked chance. 4 stories. A dagger that missed by 2 inches, a meteor that struck the right camp, a horseman who arrived just in time, a boat that was switched on a whim. But here is a question that rarely gets asked. Who wrote these stories? It was after Yingzheng won that Qin's historians recorded Jin Kou's failure. It was after Liu Xiu-Claude became emperor that the Book of the Later He described that meteor. It was after Yingzheng Pine Fates, Li Chirit's task Claude the Denfit. When it was after Nu a Painted Soul, the drama of the Naori Su Soul mission. It was after Jui Week, Ju Goldens, at the time to founded a dynasty that later writers recalled the moment he changed ships. Every single moment of destiny was narrated by the person who survived it. The winner called it Heaven's Will, and so Heaven's Will it became. But what about the loser's luck? Somewhere in history, other men made equally bold choices at equally critical moments, broke through sieges, took impossible gambles, staked everything on one throw. And then the dagger did not miss. The meteor did not fall. The horsemen did not arrive. They vanished, and not even their names survived. The history we read is not the whole truth. It is the story told by the ones who got lucky. What we call destiny may just be the name that survivors give to their own good fortune. And those who were not so fortunate, their stories sank to the bottom long ago, where no one will ever read them.